Apple did such a great job with their stores. Remember that used to be people would hang out there at the photo booths. It really was that cultural center.
This Week in E-Commerce, episode 112. I am Mal Cheer, and back with me is Alex Ross. Alex, how are you?
Hello, Mel. I'm well, thank you. I'm back.
Excellent. How was the Tinny rally?
It was unreal. 5 days on the water. I covered around 550 Ks, mostly swagged it, camped with my dad. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun just to be out in nature, see the River Murray, see all the animals. It was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. And is this an experience which you think you'll do again?
Would, from that element of great to disconnect, leave the laptop behind, and spend kind of quality time in, like, I don't know, on the land, if that makes sense. I don't know. It was really grounding. It was a great experience.
Reconnecting with nature. Look, that is like one of the big trends at the moment in terms of just like people wanting to reconnect back with physical things after spending so much time in the digital world. You see that the rise of analog, right? And like record sales, vinyl sales are booming at the moment. And I know because I've got a stack of vinyl over there.
Well, it made me think a lot about looking at all the guys on the rally, and there were some girls too, don't get me wrong. It was definitely mostly blokes. The gear that they have around these, I would call them micro moments, and made me like think a lot about that, of how we making sure that we know about these moments to then have SEO, have ad campaigns. For example, on the Tinny Rally, everybody needed to have a camping toilet. I won't go into the details of that. You can, yeah, like not gross, but everyone had to have one. So there was 90 people going out to try and buy one of these in the week leading up to that event. So yeah, got me thinking a lot about what people spend their money on and its experiences, whether that's vinyls, whether that's camping gear.
Yeah, fantastic. And now we're back into the thick of things with we're there in November and peak is just around the corner, if it hasn't started already.
Well, I'm definitely already getting Black Friday emails in the inbox. I'm sure you've seen a couple.
I have. I got several this morning. Been seeing the ads. I've screenshotted a bunch of them actually. Just this morning alone, I screenshotted 6 different ads for Black Friday sales, which are starting or people beginning their hype phase.
Yeah, it's only going to get more and more from here.
Yep, absolutely. As it always does. So I was going to be curious whether people last go the distance or whether they just go for like a short period, then maybe come back later. Very curious to see what people do.
We'll see. I think we'll see how many people can hold strong and not feel the pressure when they're seeing these other brands go early.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to dive straight into it. We've got quite a few topics to cover off. Alex, you're just getting in the swing of things. So it'll be interesting what you have to say about some of these. So last week we covered off that Amazon were increasing their prices for sellers. So sellers on the platform, they were increasing it by about, I think about 4.9% from memory. They've also since announced that on that same day that they are laying off 14,000 corporate jobs. And Puma at the same time have also laid off 1,400. Now, they're kind of like differences because Amazon are laying it off and they were very open about it because of about efficiency and also about AI replacing these jobs, whereas Puma have had a Q3 drop in their revenue.
Yeah.
So this drop in automation, it's coming for everyone, it feels like.
Well, particularly like at Amazon, that's a lot, 14,000, when they're at the forefront of this AI. So would have been pretty terrible to see it coming. It's really interesting. What do you take on the Puma layoffs?
Look, I think Puma probably makes a lot more sense because they're declining, and as a brand, they need to kind of figure out where they need to go and how they need to recover from here. But it's always interesting when the first response a company makes to something like this is to make job cuts. There was a term which I saw a couple of days ago, OrgZempic. So Ozempic for organizations, where all organizations are just going, great, we're not hitting our targets. We need to be more efficient. We've got AI. We're just going to cut jobs. And the counter to that was, if that's your first instinct is to cut costs and cut jobs, then you don't really have a strategy for growth because that's your first instinct. In Amazon's case, you can see the writing on the wall. They're leaning hard into AI and automation. And as one of the world's most valuable companies with a stack of shareholders, they need to keep increasing the profits, in order for that share price to keep growing and for Bezos to keep funding various trips to the moon.
And hopefully not various weddings as well. Yeah, I don't know. So it's a lot of jobs. They're obviously growing and hopefully Puma can pick up. If we're keeping it on that OrgZempic analogy, don't they say after Ozempic you gain all the weight back? So maybe Puma will come out of this and hopefully rehire and get back to that headcount.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I know there's a lot of other companies who are making layoffs at the moment as well.
Yeah.
One company which isn't, though, is JB Hi-Fi, where they have announced really steady growth. So nothing spectacular, but their year-on-year sales as a group are up 2.7% to $2.2 billion. And both the JB Hi-Fi and the Good Guys have grown. And online sales have grown to be over 10% of their sales now at $226 million. So I just love this company. Like they don't do anything that special. They just keep growing and growing and growing. They have a great brand, great offering. Their value proposition is just super clear.
Yeah, me too. I've said it before, it's one of my favorites. I think just when you look at their operational efficiency, how much they're putting into the business versus how much they're getting out, it's so impressive. And to know that 10% of their sales is online, I find it shocking just knowing how great their site is and how easy it is to shop online. But again, it just speaks to that store experience, that footprint, being around every corner, and having great staff there too.
Yeah, you can just pop down the road and get what you want straight away. And if not,
Exactly.
they'll ship it from somewhere else.
Yep. Yep. There's
It's
all.
great. It's a great company. Super excited that they've been able to grow, particularly in a down market, but also just again a testament to just doing the basics right. Just being really clear on what you have to offer, doing that extremely well, and the growth will come. You don't need to be chasing trends.
Yep. Yep. I think of their in-store experience similar to Chemist Warehouse, where it's just like bare bones, it's just got racks of products and that's it. There's no fancy VM. It sells itself.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, now another company which has recorded some positive growth is one which has been in the doldrums for the last couple of years, actually, which is Starbucks. So Starbucks announced in their latest earnings report that they have grown their sales by 2%, which is the first growth they've experienced in 7 quarters. Now, their net revenue is also up 5% year on year to $9.1 billion. And loyalty has contributed a large part of this with an 11% increase in loyalty customers coming back. Now, what I love about this story is similar to JB Hi-Fi is that under their new CEO, Brian Nickel, they focused on returning Starbucks back to its roots. So the whole premise of this turnaround strategy is called Back to Starbucks, where they're focusing back on making Starbucks that third place again. And third place is something we've talked about before, about how important that is in society now. And I think this is just, again, another fantastic story of going back to what makes you special.
Yeah. And what brought that brand around in the first place. It's really impressive. The time frame of 7 quarters, I think, is interesting. Again, dare we say like a recession indicator where people were cutting down on coffee for the last 7 quarters and now we're feeling confident and we're back.
I don't think we're feeling that confident, especially after the inflation announcement last week, up to 3.2% in Australia.
No, that's true. That's true. Maybe there's certain Americans that are feeling confident.
Yeah, potentially. But I think a lot of this, though, is just going back to service and making people feel welcome in Starbucks. I remember my first experience at a Starbucks was in the US, actually. And it was just such a lovely experience. No one was rushing you out the door. It wasn't super busy. You could just stay there comfortably on a couch working while getting your coffee. And you never wanted to leave. It was just a very comfortable thing. And it's changed a lot in the last few years. So it's interesting now that they're going back to that, where it's about the experience now. It's about really replicating that European coffee shop experience, but in a Starbucks instead. And one thing which caught my eye is that no longer are they going to be printing out your coffee, the label with your name and your order. They're going to be writing it again on your cup.
We love that. I think that's a great touch. And the experience piece, really, really important. Interesting to see how they lean into that. Like nothing better than getting people into your store, buying something and then staying. So yeah, that's really great.
All right. And one last quick one is Australia Post CEO Paul Graham made an announcement last week. So in a press release, was urging customers to come back and back Team Australia and warning against the rising threat of foreign giants like Amazon, Temu, and Shein. So this is obviously nothing new for listeners of the podcast. We've been talking about this for a little while. Great that Australia Post have gone out and said this, but is it going to make a difference? Do you think customers are going to be swayed by this? Are they going to be motivated by supporting Australia versus being able to buy it cheaper from the Amazons, Temus, and Sheins of the world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's worth everybody asking the people around them that aren't in this industry what they feel about these platforms. My uh, Anecdotal story I'd say is that originally there was a lot of, as we know, skepticism, but now more and more are hopping on, they're really comfortable. So to see that growth in a year is quite frightening, where we know that people are doing the majority of their shopping on Amazon and Temu. I'm all for the retail patriotism, but when we're in the economy that we are, like, price pressures just make sense.
It does. But you still need to focus on quality. And that's the thing I think a lot of retailers here, that if you are going to compete against some of these other bigger players, it's like you need to focus on, again, what makes you you,
Mhm.
which is the storytelling, the branding, the quality of the product. So hopefully you're not just buying something from a manufacturer and, and rather than actually just designing something and manufacturing something yourself. They're the only ways to stand out in this market, because if you are just buying the exact same product which your factory is probably selling on Temu as well, it's a race to the bottom. You're going to lose. You need to figure out how can you make that stand out and differentiated in the market.
That's it. And that's when I first was going through Temu, I was so surprised to see products that I know brands are selling at a good price point are available on Temu. And then it's connecting those dots of they've come from the same manufacturer. So the more R&D, the more value, the more you can get away from being that same, is going to be really going to be important.
All right, we're going to get into our deep dives now. And the first one is Lululemon, which is a brand which we always seem to be talking about. They have recently announced last week that they have a partnership with the NFL. Now, this isn't just any partnership. They have partnered with all 32 teams to release a collection of men's and women's apparel. It's going to be available on their website, the NFL shop, Fanatics, and also their own stores as well. So this is a really big play. The NFL is probably the most expensive property in sporting property anyway in America. So this is a really huge collaboration. But my question though is that there has been a little bit of controversy around this, with some people pushing back, some people loving it and saying how fantastic this is to be partnering with the NFL. But other people saying, is this actually a sign of Lulu losing their roots, losing focus about, again, what makes them special and chasing a demographic which they haven't historically been about?
Yeah, and also off the back of us talking about Lululemon a few weeks ago now, and how they're getting those competitive pressures from Alo Yoga and other big players in the market. So I think it's an interesting time to announce this collab. I've also seen controversy um, on TikTok, is where I first saw this be announced. There was a video that had over 116,000 likes. I was just looking at it before, and it was basically saying this is great, but the product isn't that different. And that's the same criticism that Lulu had had previously, was that they just not releasing new designs and new products. I don't know if you've seen the Mal. A lot of it's just the tights with a small logo, or the same aligned jumper which everybody has in black with a tiny logo on the shoulder. So I think given that, it's interesting. We'll see how it goes.
I think from an NFL fan's perspective, and this is also where I've seen it from, is that they seem to be praising the designs because it's a more elevated sportswear look than what you would typically buy when you're buying from, when you're buying fan merchandise. Generally the quality is okay. You get a typical Adidas or Nike thing with like a logo on it, but there was praise for how this seemed to be a little bit more elevated than that. So I can see
Interesting.
both sides as well. But what do you think about chasing the male demographic? Whereas Lulu have been so historically female, yes, they have men, but obviously women make up quite a big chunk of it. And when you talk about sports and NFL, well, the number one customer is men.
Yeah, I think it makes sense from the sales numbers that they're chasing, and they've got to open up that demographic even further. I just think it's even more competitive, particularly in this, what would you call it, professional sports, which is really when they're doing an NFL. Yes, we're targeting fans, but we're saying that we're playing with the professional athletes, and they can use our gear and perform well. So no, I think it's interesting. I hope it lands because it's a big risk.
Me personally, I think it's a bit of chasing that short term dopamine hit or that short term sugar high,
Yeah.
where it's like, let's chase this market, let's try to get this market, but then losing sight of that long game about, again, how do you focus on what that is? Whereas when you look at Aloe have just released like a $2,000 fur coat. I think I saw. I didn't go into the detail. I didn't go to the PDP on that, but I saw it and went, okay, that's really interesting. Considering they did the handbag a little while ago, now they've got like a literal fur coat. It's like, wow, okay, they are really. You can see the market they're heading. You can sense that. Whereas Lulu now seems like they're kind of like going down a step.
I'd say they're lost. And it was a yoga brand that puts it all in perspective. Whereas high end yoga with your fur coats, I see that, but yoga with NFL is more disconnected for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see how this one goes. Looking forward to seeing some numbers on this in a few months' time.
Mhm.
All right. In a similar vein, we have Gymshark. I have partnered with Dick's Sporting Goods, so in particular their House of Sports brand, to for their very first wholesale partnership into the US. Now they're going to be in 12 House of Sports stores around the US, and Gymshark have already said that the US customer makes up about 50% of their total customer base at the moment, which is obviously fantastic. But what's interesting though is that Gymshark have always been that poster child for D2C. They were one of the brands which really, really broke through, got to that $1 million plus valuation just on D2C alone. But now they've opened multiple stores. They've got two now in London, and now they're opening in wholesale throughout the US. And these stores are going to be fully branded Gymshark areas within the stores. So it's going to feel like a bit of a Gymshark experience as well. But I wondered, like, what does this say for D2C? And we'd be talking about having to go into physical at some stage and going to bricks and mortar. Is this more of an admission that D2C is limited? Or is it more something where it's not just a channel anymore? Like D2C is not your whole business. You're just part of the whole retail mix. And you need to be expanding into different paths to purchase for your customer.
You've got to be diversifying. There's such a risk having a business in one channel. And then going back to that earlier stat of 10% of JB Hi-Fi's revenue comes from online, makes you go, if I'm making this much online, how much could I make in store if I've got 12 stores across the US, right?
Mm.
So I don't think it's a betrayal. I think it's like the acknowledgement of the level up. They've done really great. Hopefully they don't lose their roots there. Obviously it's a big revenue driver for them. But yeah, how can they start to mix it up?
Yeah, what I like about it is that they're only focusing on two collections. I think they're Vital and then there's another one, which is one of their core ones. And that's all they're putting in there. So there's still going to be some differentiation between what's in their
Mm.
own D2C business as well. And I think that is a really good move rather than trying to put everything in there and cannibalizing their own business. It's about introducing those, I feel anyway, it's about introducing a new customer, who doesn't know about Gymshark, who doesn't necessarily go to the Gymshark store, and they're certainly not in marketplaces to be exposed to the brand, in the largest sporting goods store in the US.
Material touch, I think, is so important for getting new shoppers to try those two lines to feel that fabric in store. Wouldn't be able to get that from a D2C customer.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people over the years who've been saying, stay away from wholesale. Wholesale is difficult. And I don't disagree. Wholesale is difficult and your margins are much lower, but I wouldn't ignore it. And I think this is a sign that for Gymshark, if Gymshark are going down this path, you shouldn't cut off wholesale and just focus wholly on D2C. There's got to be a point, and there are benefits to being able to just having your brand visible in a lot more places.
Absolutely. What I'm curious about in this story is they've got two stores in London. Are they through Dick's House of Sports stores or their own store?
No, the two London stores are their stores.
So I think it's interesting that they've done their two own stores and then they've gone, okay, we could start our own stores in the US. Actually, let's wholesale. I think there's probably more to the story in their experience in managing a store.
Well, they've opened up a second one. So they've got two stores now. The London one's, I think, been around for about 3-4 years. And they've opened up a new one, I think, in the last couple of months. But at some stage, I dare say they will probably open a US store. But I think this is a way to access a new market as well. And again, trying to broaden their appeal. Whereas, they started off firstly focusing on like that hardcore bodybuilding gym goer crowd. And now more and more, they've become more and more mainstream. So this is a great way to expose themselves to a more mainstream audience and see how they go, because the brand certainly has recognition. So this is a new way to continue to build on that.
And I think being called the House of Sports store, great to associate, open themselves up, like you said, from that kind of gym junkie through to just all wider sporting goods and athleisure.
Now, our final deep dive is one which is actually completely counter to everything we've just talked about, particularly with the wholesale play in the bricks and mortar, is that Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, I don't think he went out on a limb, but he went out and said, what Amazon's aiming to do, which is to end bricks and mortar. And he has said, quote unquote, AI will end bricks and mortar. And he feels that the flip of 80 to 85% bricks and mortar versus online is going to flip to be 80 to 85% online. Now, I think this helps with their share price. Obviously, people are going to be buying more Amazon. I think Amazon is a great stock and definitely one to watch, not financial advice. Like, do you think this is actually possible? Do you
Oh,
think AI is going to kill stores?
I think to a degree of, if you've got a very specific requirement, we'll all normally go in store to discuss that. I don't know, I'm going to Japan skiing for the first time. I don't know what I need. I'm worried my gear isn't going to be warm enough. Please, can you help me? Now, with AI, that conversational AI and that kind of we call it like problem solving AI, really, where you can put all of those requirements, even, give them the map where you're going and get that kind of support and service through ChatGPT, Gemini, all of those types of pieces. So I think I see where there's going to be less reliance on customer service in store now that we can truly get that depth online, which we weren't able to get before quickly and easily without 500 emails back and forth. But I wouldn't say I agree on a whole. What about you, Mel?
I don't agree either. I think AI will help with product discovery. I think it's going to improve that immeasurably, and we're already starting to see that happen. But is it going to completely replace the in-store experience? I don't think so. When you're talking about more commoditized goods where it doesn't really matter what it is, like buying a new spatula, for instance, that's something you can just go to Amazon or Temu and just buy. You're going to get an okay spatula. It's going to cost $5 and it'll do the job, right? Hopefully it's not toxic. So that's the other thing you got to watch out for as well when you buy from some of those cheaper retailers. But for more high involvement purchases, you still want to go and touch and feel those goods. So like you said before, if you're talking about buying like a new ski jacket, you want to go in there and make sure it fits. Going to buy new ski boots, you want to try that on. So unless you 100% know your size and you know it's going to fit, there's always going to be that risk element there of buying something and it not fitting, and then you having to go through the process of returning it and then ordering another one. Whereas you can just go to a store, know it fits, and just walk out of it straight away. And I don't think people are going to become much better with their time either, where one of the great benefits of bricks and mortar is that you get it right now. I can walk into the store and get it straight away. You still need to order online, wait a few days, possibly a couple of weeks to receive your order if you're ordering from overseas. So there's always going to be that space for in-store retail to be able to service those immediate needs for them. But is it going to change from 80-85%? Yeah, it's probably going to go down like, maybe another 10-20%. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to completely flip.
I think if anything, it just reinforces what we've been saying for a long time, which is experiences. So what more value can you add to that in-store experience that isn't available to be online or through AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of retailers now doing that really well. July have a great in-store experience. Nikes have great stores, so does Apple. And that's where you can continue to win in retail, by creating something where people will want to go to and will go out of their way for, creating that third space.
Bit of a tangent, but just God, Google, Apple did such a great job with their stores. Remember that used to be people would hang out there at the photo booths. It really was that cultural center.
Yeah, and I think there definitely are. Like, you can't walk past an Apple store without it being fully packed out.
Yeah,
Still, even to this day. I remember people used to line up to get into there.
I know. It would be like a hangout spot. You'd be like, meet me at the Apple store.
Yeah. All right. And that is a great way to bring things full circle as we continue to focus on boring businesses, just focusing more on being that operational efficiency, figuring out what makes you special, and really leaning into that AI, whether AI is going to be replacing bricks and mortar. And we don't think so here.
No, we definitely do not.
All right. That's all we got time for on This Week in E-commerce. Alex, what's up for you this week?
Gosh, Mal, I'm always stumped by this question. I need to be better prepared. To be honest, getting through a mountain of emails, getting on top of everything, and I've got a few in-person meetings this week. So getting out of the home office, which is great. But that's about it. What about you, Mal?
Fantastic. I'm getting ready for Black Friday, just like the rest of our industry, with a few clients who are starting their hype periods now, some who are starting their sales next week. There's Click Frenzy as well. So Click Frenzy starts next week. So have a few clients who are participating in that. So there's a lot of just like prep and just making sure everything's organized. But I'm looking forward to the end of November when we are past this period. So, and hopefully everyone's hit their numbers.
Me too. And then let's put a ban on talking about Black Friday for a month at least.
Yes. Yep. Unless it continues through December, which who knows, it might. All right. That's all we got time for. Keep innovating, keep selling, and keep growing. And we'll be back next week.
Thank you.